Good evening, everybody. My name is Dustin Hurst, and this is episode number 6 of Freedom Bros. Now, again, I am the lone Freedom Bro tonight. Greg Pruitt is having issues with his internet. He he lives over in Rigby, and they just got plumbing over there last week, and so internet is right behind it, and it's still a little slow. I'm just kidding, Rigby. I love you. That was my hometown for a number of years. Don't hate me if you're from Rigby. I actually love Rigby. I actually missed the V1 where you got the free popcorn with the fill up of gas, but that's another story for another day. Quick preview of tonight's show and a couple things we've got coming up. So tonight, Greg and I told you that this show is going to be tuned largely to the 2024 election. Now, last week we had a presidential candidate on, a libertarian who's not going to win at all, but we had a good discussion. This week, we start to really get into it. A lot of people are very concerned about what's going on in Washington, D.C. They think, oh, my goodness, Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer, or if this D.C. politician would just do this, we could fix the country. That's nonsense. D.C. is broken, completely broken, and nothing is going to repair it. When Mike Simpson feels like it's okay to vote in defense of Adam Schiff, we've got a problem. The national debt is going to be like $500 trillion in like 3 weeks, and nobody's doing anything about it. DC is broken. What's not broken completely is the Idaho Legislature. The Idaho Legislature is a somewhat conservative body, except for the fact that they passed, Biden-esque college programs this year, right? You get your free college with taxpayer funding, and Education Inc. gets its stable source of income. They get their customers, and then they get to teach them critical race theory, and that there are 437 genders, and you can choose daily which one you get to be. The Idaho Legislature should be more conservative than it is, but it's not because, and this is what Greg and I contend, we haven't paid enough attention to the people who want to run and be in our legislature. Greg and I are fixing that. Tonight, we're going to talk to a guy named Steve Tanner. He's running in District 13 for Seat B in the Idaho House of Representatives, and we're going to talk to him. He's going to give us his pitch, and we're going to ask him hard questions and see who he is, see what he believes, and see why he thinks he should be able to govern over us and our lives. Because remember, the state legislature makes a lot of decisions that affect you every single day. The gas tax that you pay at the pump, that's the state legislature. Your income tax, state legislature. Your food tax, property taxes. Now, property taxes, they control the formula. They don't necessarily control the amounts necessarily, but it's still something that the legislature can deal with, and they sort of do, and they've sort of kicked the bucket or kicked the can down the road. So we're going to talk to Steve and see what he wants to do, why he's running. Now, before we get to Steve, we are sort of an equal opportunity show. We've said that we will give anybody a shot. If you agree with us, if you're a Democrat, if you're a communist, although that's redundant, we'll give anybody a shot to come and defend their point and defend their career or make their sales pitch right to voters. So Steve's going to be on this week. Amy Henry, who is also running for this same seat, is going to be on next week. She's confirmed. She was excited to be on the show. She's going to make her pitch to us next week, and we're going to ask her largely the same tough questions that we asked Steve. And then Kenny Roten, who is the incumbent here, is going to be, we're going to invite him. I doubt he'll be on the show because he's not necessarily a fan of conservatives, but the invitation will be made for him because we want everybody to get a fair shake here. By the way, if you are a candidate and you want to come on the show, more than happy to have you. Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Constitution Party, Green Party, whatever. I think there's a Forward Party now. If you're whatever party, we want to have you on. So reach out. I can't remember Greg's email address, but just drop a comment in the comments section, or send me an email at dustinhurst1@gmail.com. That's the best address I've got right now. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not prepared for this. I am prepared to bring on Steve Tanner, who is running for seat 13B for the Idaho Legislature. Let's bring him on right now. Steve, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So before we get into the hard questions, I want you to give me your background. Who are you as a person? What have you done with your life? Why are you running for this seat? Tell us that, will you?
Okay. Well, I grew up in a military family. My dad was career Navy. He retired after 36 years in the Navy. We moved around from base to base. That was pretty much my childhood, uh, all over the country and international as well. Um, my career has been I've been a database programmer for most of my career. I still do that. I'm an analyst, database programmer. And I've been living in Idaho. It'll be 7 years this September.
Where did you live before Idaho?
We were in California in Ventura County.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Okay. We got to stop and dig into that before voters automatically write you off. Let's talk about this. Okay. Tell me about California and why you left.
Oh, I mean, for the same reason so many are leaving California. So many conservatives are leaving California. We're political refugees. There's the quality of life there has changed so much. I watched it in my lifetime just change from basically a conservative state to what it is today, and so that's why we left.
Was there some? I know a lot of people. They left during the COVID era, just the last couple of years, because the COVID restrictions were so bad, school lockdowns, stuff like that, masking, all that stuff. Was there one inciting incident that like spurred your move, or was it kind of just like I kind of hate it here now?
Well, yeah, that definitely reached that point. There was a boiling point where you just say, I hate it here now. I got to get out of here. At a couple different times I worked in downtown LA, so I had to commute to downtown LA.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Deal with downtown LA, what goes on down there. But like I said, I moved around a lot as a kid, and I saw a lot of different parts of the country. We lived, like I said, on military bases, small towns, and my wife has a friend who lives here in Boise, so we came here 30 years ago, and I fell in love with the town then, and it was always kind of a destination to me. We actually came here a little over 20 years ago to see if a move here was possible at that time, but the real estate differential just wasn't working in our favor. So I kept looking at it, and finally just got to a point where I said, especially after the Obama years, and then what was happening in California, just said, got to get out of here. I said, I'm going.
So you settled on Nampa, right? Why Nampa? I mean, because I've lived in every part of the state. I've lived in Twin, Idaho Falls. It's so freaking cold over there. I understand why nobody lives over there. Why Nampa?
Well, it's interesting. I did come up here and do a lot of different visits, just some, research and stuff, just looking around. I looked at CUNA. I looked at Boise really hard, Eagle really hard. Everybody was saying, yeah, Eagles were, great place to go. It feels more like California, but I didn't want that. I didn't want something that felt like California.
Right.
And actually, Nampa is a little bit more of a multicultural community. And I'm used to that, being from that part of California. And this just felt more comfortable. It was a little bit more rural feel. I didn't know anything about the politics of Canyon County versus Ada County, and any of that, what was going on. But so we found a property that we really like out here in Nampa, and this is where we are.
Okay, let's talk politics. Let's dive right in. I'm sure we'll get to more background, but I guess the first question is, in continuation of my last question, why do you think you are qualified to serve, and why do you? I guess it's two questions. Why do you want to serve?
Right. Well, the reason why I want to serve is I feel like I have to. I mean, you think about what's been going on. What we just experienced with COVID. And how our rights, our basic rights, were challenged and trampled on, over the past couple of years. Churches, were closed down. How we were we went into lockdown, statewide lockdown, a state of emergency. And I don't think we had any cases or any deaths of COVID at that point. There was a very quick reaction to lock us down. And then just, businesses, the non-essential businesses were closed, and children were sent home. The school was done remotely. That gave us a window to see what was going on in the schools. We began to see how deeply, the woke agenda had taken root in our schools. And there's a lot of wrongs, a lot of things that have been going on. And, we feel like what we really need is we need people who will stand up to that, and will take the challenge back against that. And I don't see anybody else in my district right now who is saying that they will do that, or evidencing that they will do that. So that is why I'm moving forward.
We'll get back to that. We'll get back to that. I have some thoughts bubbling around. Greg is asking me questions, and he wants me to ask you some questions. So let's dive right into policy. And there's no, and this is what I told Steve beforehand. He's going to be in the gauntlet if he wins his election, and he's going to say, or he's going to have to take all the hard questions. He's going to cast the hard votes. There's no ducking any of this. So I said, Steve, there are going to be hard questions tonight. And he was like, okay, let's do it. Didn't back down. So kudos to him for doing that. The ballot initiative process, liberals are using the ballot initiative process. They're using outside California labor union money to put ballot initiatives on our ballots. And then they're using more labor union money to sell really bad ideas with nifty packaging to Idahoans. Medicaid expansion, the socialist sellout education spending plan. Now we're looking at ranked choice voting and open primaries. I guess the question that Greg wants me to ask you is, do you support ballot initiatives, and would you support getting rid of ballot initiatives?
Yes, I would support getting rid of them.
But what about your fellow Republican lawmakers in the House and in the Senate too? A lot of them say, oh, well, we need to listen to the will of the people. The people voted on this, so we need to listen to what they had to say.
I think that there's ample opportunity, to work in the system that through the State House to accomplish the same things.
It's so pure. It's so pure. The next question that Greg is you notice our Freedom Bros. I forgot to play our teaser. Darn it. Oh, well. In our logo at the corner there is Waits, which is me. And Greg's the gun guy. He's the leader of the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. And he wants me to ask you, gun control. Where do you stand on gun control? And is there a scenario in which you will enact any sort of gun regulations, any sort?
Well, it's an interesting question. What do you mean by gun control? Do you mean like red flag laws? Is that what you're getting at?
If that's what gun control means to you, I mean, if that means bump stocks, I mean, Trump already got those. Pistol braces, any sort of regulations on guns, because quite frankly,
I wouldn't support the pistol braces, or the bump stocks. Interesting. I watched a YouTube today with Josh Hawley from Missouri. You know him, and right. It was right on this very subject. That we have there is no Heller held up that citizens have the right to defend themselves. And, there's you can't violate that, but that decision also said that states can make reasonable recommendations for how to enforce that. So, for instance, one of the things that I would really be skeptical of, for example, is red flag laws, because of the issue of due process. I mean, if the state said this is a reasonable recommendation, and that starts floating around, this is a reasonable explanation, then I would say, how is it going to be implemented? The way that it's typically implemented is that there's no due process until after the police come or whoever comes, and takes your gun away, just based on a concern that somebody has. So I would definitely be against it, implemented that way.
Is there ever a scenario? So let me play a scenario through you that just happened this year. So if you look at the shooting in Tennessee, right?
Right.
It was a Christian school. A trans student went in, shot up the school. We all saw the video of the police going in, heroic stuff, sad, tragic shooting all around. Their Republican legislature, many of the, I don't remember how it ended up, but many of the Republicans said, okay, enough. We need red flag laws. Is there any scenario in which there's maybe a shooting or a tragedy here in Idaho and you say, okay, that's enough. Like, we need to do something to clamp down on gun violence. Red flag laws are the only solution or the best solution that we have right now, because that a lot of Republicans think that that's the answer. I'm curious if there's a scenario that works for you.
There might be, but I think it would be in the details. I mean, but not just as policy. We're just going to implement red flag laws all over the place.
Okay. Let's talk about your platform. I mean, I know it's early in the campaign, but you obviously have some ideas on what you'd like to bring to the state house, what you'd like to see fixed. What's the number one issue that you think lawmakers need to address and haven't addressed appropriately for the good of Idahoans?
Well, I probably the most emotional issue, one that I have a lot of deep feelings about, is protecting our children. What didn't happen this last go around, as you know, was removing or putting in requirements, so that minors cannot access sexually explicit books. I think the loophole in our obscenity laws is silly to begin with. That they can even have access to that at all. But I think that's something that needs to be addressed immediately. That's one reason why I'm running, is because Kenny Roden did not vote to do that. In fact, he voted against it twice.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second. I'm going to take the liberal position. I shouldn't say those words because somebody will screen clip them and use them against me somehow. But I'm somebody who believes in we should have as much access to media as possible. I'm against censorship in most forms, if not all. But is this a slippery slope? Is this a place where you give the government power to censor books, and then, okay, it's maybe sexually explicit books today, and then it's books that are, touch on touchy topics of race, and then it just keeps going down? Is this a slippery slope, or is this just something that needs to happen?
I don't think it is a slippery slope. For instance, specifically for the reason, in fact, in our obscenity law, it states that it has been shown that when minors are exposed to sexually explicit materials, that it is harmful to them. And so I think that, that's part of what we need to consider. We do this in so many other areas of life. We don't let minors buy alcohol. We don't let minors drive without a license because it's not safe and it's not beneficial for them. We have to legislate some of these things. So yeah, we could have complete just lawlessness, I guess, if you will, where you don't regulate anything. I think I remember hearing one of our legislators say, you can't legislate morality. Well, we do it all the time. We have areas where we do that. That's, for instance, again, with alcohol abuse or alcohol purchasing, by minors, for example.
How far should we legislate morality, though? That's a serious question that we grapple with. What's on the table if we're legislating morality? And by the way, I'm not playing. I don't know what I believe here. Actually, I know what I believe. That was dumb. I guess the question is there an argument for not doing this because it gives government way too much power and interferes in our lives too much?
No, I think the answer to your question is how much or how far. It would be minimally only insofar as it's needed to keep our children safe or keep people safe.
Okay. So that's your number one issue is making sure that kids aren't exposed to sexually explicit materials. Which, like, I didn't think that in 2023 we would have to be dealing with this
Yeah.
and fighting drag queens and stuff like that. But like, here we are. What's your second issue?
Well, yeah, just to follow up on that, I'm a few years older than you. I would have never imagined in my lifetime that that would be a concern. That we would even needing, and like what we're seeing with the transvestites, going to schools or being in front of kids. I would never have imagined that in our lifetime.
That was
And
not on my bingo card at all for the 2020s. Like I was like, okay, COVID, that's okay, sure. Now we've got aliens and drag queens are literally trying to take over schools. Like, and it's like their goal. Like they will say, I see social media posts all over the place. They're like, yeah, we're coming to schools and we're not going to stop coming to schools until we've like infiltrated all the schools. And like,
yeah,
what the hell is going on here? I don't even know.
yeah.
it's
and
just,
so and we just have to fight it. We have to get active. We have to be very active against it.
I just, are we okay? Like, what if we tried to have strippers in schools? Like, is that okay now? Like, is that a thing? I just, it's beyond me. Okay. Issue number 2 on your platform, what do you think the legislature needs to deal with?
Another one that you mentioned kind of in your intro is, about property taxes. I think property taxes continues to be a big issue among citizens. I know it's a concern for me. So I think property taxes is something that continues to need to be worked on. And just in the last legislative session, they passed 292, which is a really interesting bill. I'm not sure that I completely understand it or that I even completely agree with it. But we need to continue to work on that. We need to continue to chip away.
So here's the thing. And I got into lots of IFF's Fred Birnbaum is like the guy on property taxes and budgets, and he understands the stuff way more than I do. But he and I got into some shouting matches over 292 because what happens is the bill takes money from the state fund. If this is the same bill that we're talking about, takes money from the state fund and gives it to local governments to buy down property taxes. Right. There are two things wrong with that too. Let's see if I can get my number one. There is no incentive, no corralling of costs at all. None, zero. Governments have zero incentive to actually control the driving force behind rising property taxes, which is rising costs. Okay, right. That's one thing. The other thing is people, this is going to get a little heady for a second. People who don't own homes, renters, pay into the general fund. Businesses pay into the general fund. Homeowners also pay into the general fund, but only homeowners get the benefit of that program. It is a handout to homeowners, and we have lots of handouts to homeowners, by the way. There's no way that you can rebate property taxes theoretically to renters, but basically it's a handout from, like, I rent because I got caught in this weird loop where, like, we sold right at the beginning of the house price spike, and we're saving up for another house. It'll be another year or so. I'm subsidizing homeowners with my tax dollars. That's the most insane. I can't afford a house. You said you might not agree with it. What's your issue with the bill?
Well, okay, I want to say what my issue with the bill is, and then I want to come back to sure. your point about homeowners. So my issue with the bill is that now we have a big government architecture, a big structure that gets created in order to to administer all this, statewide. And I'm not sure that's the best way to handle it either. And just kind of on principle, it kind of rubs me the wrong way. That we're creating more government, to deal with, a problem that can be dealt with in other ways potentially. And that's what I want to investigate. But
sorry, go ahead.
But the other thing, I kind of disagree with you about homeowners, get the only benefit here, because commercial property owners, they don't pay. I mean, they don't have a homeowners exemption, right? So they're paying more. So what do? They pass that on to the renters, and what it's like. You're renting, so what rent costs, how rent costs have gone up in the past few years. Yep. I mean, not only here, but all over the place. But so, I mean, property owners, commercial property owners, I'm sure they're not all just really sweet people. I'm sure they pass those costs along, to renters like you.
Oh,
So
yeah, they absolutely do. So the question here is, and this is, if you don't have an answer to this, that's a-okay, because not many people do. Is there an answer? Is there any sort of solution to the property tax crisis that we're facing that you know of? Or is this something that you just want to work on like from day one?
I want to work on it. I'm studying it for the next year and a half. This is one thing that I'll be studying. It's a really complicated issue. There's lots of moving parts, and there's pieces that operate at different levels. Part of it, like you said, is at state level, but a lot of it's local level too. But where I'm curious to see, if we could find some sort of accommodation is, just creating a wider base, to shoulder the burden, as maybe in sales tax, some other way, so that it gets spread out more evenly, so that not any one group is shouldering the burden.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. Let me ask you this, and we're not ready for it yet, but if there were some grand compromise or grand plan to eliminate the property tax, would you support that? And here's the thing why. Brian Allman, who's watching the show, Brian's got some big news. I'll let him tweet that anyway. Brian's watching the show. He points out that property taxes are immoral, right? Because if you don't pay your property tax, even if your house is paid off, you still can go to jail. You can lose your house. So basically, you're paying rent to the government for the rest of your life. Would you support eliminating the property tax?
If there was a bill that was feasible, and still left the other entities, able to operate, absolutely.
Okay, that's the right answer. There is a right answer. Sometimes in policy there's not, but that's the right answer there, because the property tax is probably the worst tax that we have. Okay.
And especially if maybe the low hanging fruit, regarding that, maybe you don't get all of that right away, but I think the low hanging fruit there is, what about the homeowners that, and I see it right here in our neighborhoods. The people that have lived in their homes for 25 years, their house has been paid off for a long time. Their kids are no longer in school. They've all moved on, and and they're paying property tax at increased rates. Because probably their property value has gone up because of the new development around them. How is that fair to them? How is that moral? I mean, they've already paid it forward. In terms of the taxes that they've paid in the past for the infrastructure that we enjoy, that we use. Yep. So I think the low hanging fruit there is, for people that are older and especially those that are retired, they've been living in their homes. I don't know what the threshold is. Maybe it's 20 years, maybe it's 25 years, but let's look at that first, getting some relief there.
Well, and I would say, again, this comes down to taxation as a theory. There's no fair taxation in property tax in any way, shape, or form. And it is unconstitutional to divide property taxes by class, or any tax by class, that way. It's a long discussion. But for example, my sister and brother-in-law live in Idaho Falls. They've owned their house for the last 15 to, I think, 20 years at this point. They don't have kids. They have 0 kids. They've been paying into the school system forever. Mm-hmm. And I can understand the argument of paying for cops and paying for county services and roads and stuff like that. But they've been paying into the school district forever.
Right.
That's a problem. That's a problem. And a lot of liberals will say, well, you got to pay that for an educated society. Well, we don't have that. So I want my damn money back, quite frankly.
Right.
Okay. Let's talk about one more. So you've got books, sexually explicit books, property taxes. What else? What's one more thing that you want to deal with in the legislature?
I think Idaho sovereignty.
What does that mean exactly?
So for me, what that means, I mean, what we've seen, just in the past few years, is just number one thing is the infusion of federal money, for example, just flooding into Idaho, Medicaid. We got to curb Medicaid expansion. We have to roll it back, if possible. I've talked to a couple legislators about that. They say we might be able to carve out dental, in the near term. But Medicaid is just exploding. the budget that was just passed, I think Medicaid is 4.5 billion. 3.1 billion of that is federal dollars. Okay.
People don't understand that the state has the ability to cut back on that growth of that welfare program. They just don't. And that's everyone says, well, Idaho's this ruby red conservative state. No, it's not. No, it's not, because we're just as bad on Medicaid as a lot of purple states and blue states. I mean, we may not be as bad as California on this, but like, holy crap, we are taking money out of grandma's pocket, for example, or the retiree's pocket to pay for able-bodied single adults in a relatively hot job market to get free healthcare. Like, that's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Conservative Idaho is doing that right now. But the question is, and this is one of the core issues of what we want in our lawmakers. If you do that, if you try to cut Medicaid expansion, Luke Mayville, who apparently runs this freaking state now, will say Steve Tanner is trying to take healthcare away from poor people, and he'll wheel somebody in a wheelchair into your district. That person will tell a sob story, and they'll try to run you out of town. Do you have the guts to stand up against that?
You know what? There are legitimate needs for Medicaid. I had a personal friend who passed on. He was diagnosed with a terminal disease. It was over a period of 8 years. I watched him decline. His last effort to remain free was to go on Medicaid. So I understand, a legitimate use for it. So in that case, if they wheel that guy in, if he's anything like my friend, I say that's a legitimate use. But what I see happening, it seems like they want to keep relaxing, the requirements, in order to get onto Medicaid. So there are more and more people coming on to Medicaid, and then especially on the heels of what we experienced during COVID. The other monies that were coming into the state. There was COVID relief money coming in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, the small businesses, a lot of them went out of business or they were shut down, so that the big box stores could stay open, and a lot of people lost their jobs, and so there's got to be some money there available for them, so they can get by. Another way that money has been coming into the state is through the COVID relief money that was given to the public school system. Our school district right here in Nampa, I think they received somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 million. That's federal money, just coming in. And and also another way I see federal encroachment is like what the program they're trying to get the wind towers set up in Lava Ridge.
Right.
So it just seems like what's happening. One of the ways that this state is turning purple is that the federal government is just infusing all this money so that Idaho just becomes kind of like this appendage of the federal government.
Yes, that's 100%. We were never meant to be administrative districts of DC. That was not the point of federalism, and we've gotten so far away from what the founders envisioned. Right. But our they rub but they dangle the purse or the dollars in front of you, and then what's the old saying? With the shekels come the shackles, right? Is when you get the cash, you got to do what the federal government wants. It's amazing to me how dishonest people are about this, because what they'll say is, oh, well, our state budget only grew by $10 million or $50 million on Medicaid, but they're not counting the federal piece, which is hundreds of millions of dollars in growth, which my kids are going to pay, your kids and your grandkids and your great grandkids are going to pay, but nobody gives a damn, because Luke Mayville tells us we shouldn't, and we need to pay attention to our feelings. That's it. Like, it's the stupidest thing on the face of the earth. So, okay, let's talk about let's shift to the other money. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say one more thing about Idaho sovereignty. And another thing that I'm really concerned about is illegal immigration, just what's happening, just seeing, people being, dropped off basically, or shipped into the state. I've been up to shopping just in the past couple of weeks, and I just see squads of, illegal or people that are aliens. Obviously, they're looking around. They don't speak English, and they're looking around. They're trying to figure out, how the store is set up and how it operates, and they're just, like moving like ducks together, it's pretty obvious that, you know, people are being, you know, brought into the state, and you know, we know the scenario. We know what's happening at the border. We know what the Biden administration is doing, and here we are.
So the question I have is, and this is something that I'm so hyper focused on state politics that I don't even pay attention to the federal government because, like I said at the intro, it's so broken. Do state lawmakers have a role to play in this? Because traditionally, that's a job of the federal government, a job they do poorly, like everything else that they do. If state lawmakers have a role, what is that role?
Well, so that's what I'm getting at, is that, you know, even though, you know, the federal government is not doing what they should be doing at our borders, and when they're bringing people into the state, you know, I think state lawmakers can develop laws to protect the state, maybe even push back against the federal government, you know, or if people do come in, they come in under certain requirements, you know, and you know, there's you know, we have regulations about, you know, when they are brought in, you know, how and where they're going to go and how they're going to live. I don't like the idea that they're being brought in at all, and I'm not against Hispanics. Don't hear that. You know, like I said, one of the reasons why I moved to Nampa is because, you know, I've lived around those, you know, that community for a long time, but I'm against illegal immigration.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us are, which is, the country is a country of immigrants. That's a fact.
My grandparents.
Yeah, I think all of us are descendants of people who lived elsewhere. My family's from Europe and England, right? But there's a way to do it, and because our government again is so bad at immigration, that brings on illegal immigration. You know, I've heard horror stories of people who did it the right way. They got their papers, they paid the fees, they did the background checks, all of it, and it took 7 to 10 years. Like, there should be some length of time to make sure you're serious about this, but like 7 to 10 years, that's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, my grandparents came through Ellis Island. They were from Sicily, you know, and they came here. They went through that whole process themselves. I still remember my grandfather nearly coming to tears talking about the day he got his citizenship.
And that's how it should be. That's absolutely how it should be. Okay, let's move on to education, if that's okay with you. Okay, the biggest special interest in the entire state of Idaho is Education Inc. And what we hear is, oh, teachers are underpaid and classroom sizes are awful, and ignore the test scores that are abysmal. We'll get results when we have enough money. Where do you stand on the education system? What the hell is going on with it? And is there a fix in your mind to our broken education system that is very obviously broken?
Well, I don't think that our teachers are underpaid. I think with the last with budget that was just passed, with the increases that were given for teachers allocated, I think teachers Idaho teachers are going to be the 6th best paid in the country, if I read that correctly.
I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, I don't think that's the issue, but it is a huge problem. You know, for instance, here in the Nampa School District, you know, if you look at their scores, you know, their state scores, you know, how they scored on Idaho standardized testing, you know, I think it was less than 17% that were college ready. You know, that I think 60% were reading at grade level, 40% were writing at grade level. It was about 25% that are able to do math at grade level. The system is definitely
there was an interesting study, and this is the same test results. It's not a study, it's test results. Something like 80% of our youth, 80% are not proficient in history. Now, is history as important as, say, math or writing? Maybe not, but it's not far off, because if you understand the genesis of this country and what's in our DNA as Americans, you act differently. You defend our rights differently. You vote differently. But if you just think we're free people who can do whatever the hell we want without responsibility and without duty, you're going to act very, very differently. And I'm not saying that schools dumb down history curriculum or civics curriculum by design, but I'm not saying it either. It's terrible. It's terrible that kids have no idea what's going on in the world. and they can't place American excellence, which is a thing, in the timeline of history. It's a tragedy. So I guess the question I have for you is, what do we do? What's the solution? I have a solution. Which is burn down all. Let's go killdozer on all the government buildings and start over. Right? What, that may not be reasonable. What's your solution?
Yeah, that's probably not graceful. But I understand, and I could be wrong about this. I need to research this, but I think it's in the Idaho Constitution that we have to support public schools.
Correct.
So we're there, you know. So, but what we need to do is we need to, like you said, we need to revive social studies, and I think what's happening because of, you know, that has been kind of lacking, that people are being taught different. They're being taught alternate versions of U.S. history. You know, for example, at the college level, you know, Howard Zinn, you know, his history of the United States. So they fall prey, you know, to other, you know, when people come in, you know, saying, you know, that, you know, the United States is this racist society, and you know, just false narratives like that. So definitely we got to get, you know, the critical race theory out of school. We need to revive, social studies. We need to get critical race theory, you know, all the critical theories, you know, critical queer theory, all of that out of the schools. I think, you know, funds should be contingent on that. So we need to get, that's one thing we need to do. We have to support the public schools in that way. But also, I think we need to support alternative approaches to education. You know, like what we had, the ESA, you know, education savings account that was brought last time that didn't pass. But I think we need to continue to explore that. We need to expand alternative ways of educating children. I am very much in support of homeschooling. We homeschooled our son after fourth grade, from fourth grade on, and I'm very much in support of that.
Okay. Are you comfortable with money following a kid to wherever he or she chooses to go? Because there's homeschool, there's unschool, which is very similar to homeschool. There's religious schools that often do a better job than public schools. There's micro schools. I mean, are there limitations on where money should be able to follow a kid?
I think the only limitation would be that, you know, we just need to make sure that, you know, if it's like, for instance, a charter school, you know, that it just, you know, they're doing adequate, you know, academic, they're doing, you know, they're academically adequate. But other than that, I'm comfortable.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's where we're at. We homeschool our kids, right? And we pay more attention to the quality of our education than I think a lot of people do, because we care a lot and we want them to function in society. The interesting thing about charter schools is proponents of public schools say, hey, look at this charter school. This one over here failed, so a lot of charter schools must be bad, and we had to close this charter school. Okay, but do you see what you're doing there? Like, I've never seen a government school closed here in Idaho for poor performance.
No.
They just keep subsidizing poor performance in charter schools. I think there's a place for market-based reforms so that schools can compete for students, recruit the best teachers, pay them well. That's the myth about the conservatives too. I want to pay teachers a lot of money if they're really, really good, like six figures. I want a teacher who is six figures teaching my kid, and that could happen with school choice, right?
Right.
Before we have about 13 minutes left, I want to talk about process a little bit. And this kind of goes back to a question I asked earlier. You are going to be thrown into the Idaho House of Representatives if you win, 70 members. So my question, and we'll get into a couple more on this because this is really important to me because I've watched the process for about a decade or so, and I'm disturbed by some of the things I see. How do you work with members of the Democrat Party, if you need to? How do you work with members of the establishment and the conservative wing? How do you work with people who believe differently than you?
I think what's lacking, you know, among some members, I mean, is just people not stating their position clearly and standing on them. And my approach is that that's what I plan to do, is just to state, this is what I stand for. These are my values. This is what I'm going to support. If what you're offering as something for us to work on together violates those values, then I won't follow you there.
How do you stand up to leadership, though? Because Mike Moyle is not known as a gentle lamb in the Idaho legislature. He's quite the opposite. He is an aggressive bully at times. Everybody knows it. It's not some secret. Everybody just doesn't want to say it to his face. Let's say, he comes and says, hey, if you don't vote this way, I'm going to do this. You'll never serve on this committee. Does that bother you? How do you work with that?
No, that doesn't bother me. Look at me, I'm at an age where I'm not going to be, I don't have a long tenure ahead of me. Even if I did get elected, I don't have a long tenure. If let's say I played out the rest of my life, being a legislator, I don't have a long tenure. I'm not there to please anybody, to please, any of the establishment people, the hierarchy. I want to go to represent people in District 13. I want to bring my convictions to that, and I will stand on those and argue for those. And that's how I'll respond.
Okay, let's dig into that just a little bit. Let's say you win your election handily. You're up 20 points. You get to the Idaho legislature. You get a committee hearing for your bill, and you get it out of committee. And it's this great bill that, I don't know, hell, let's repeals property tax. Great. But then a member of leadership says, hey, Representative Tanner, we're going to put your bill up, but in order for you to get it passed, for us to whip votes for you to get it passed, you have to vote for this piece of crap over here so that we can give you the votes you want. Are you willing to trade votes to get your bills through?
No, not like that. Because I'm sacrificing. You're asking me to support a piece of crap, right? Which is, I'm not going to do that, Okay. So, and if I'll just be noisy about it. I'm not going to do that.
Okay. That was the right answer, by the way. I think, I don't know, maybe I'm bad at politics, but that's the right answer for me, I suppose.
Well, I bet too. I've never been a political person, so that's kind of how I'm approaching it.
Tell me, again, we have 9 minutes left. I've got a couple more questions for you. Tell me your political background. Who influences you politically? Who influences your thinking? Who do you listen to?
Oh, currently
or in the past, like if you're like a Hayek man or a Mises man or whatever, like I want to know about that. I want to know who you are.
Yeah. I know about Mises. I haven't really explored that, economic theory. But I think who I'm influenced by the most is Trump. I'm influenced by the people who are standing up for what's right in government, on the federal level, like I mentioned earlier, people like Josh Hawley, Jim Jordan, these are the people that, as I watch them navigate through the issues that they're navigating through, I watch them.
Steve, you have done us a great service by being on the show tonight. We appreciate that. In exchange, if you have a campaign website or a phone number or whatever email you want to give out, this is your chance. Give us your last final pitch and tell people where they can learn about you and your campaign.
Yeah. So my website is Steve Tanner, then the number 4, Idaho.com. Steve Tanner for Idaho.com. And yes, I would appreciate people going there and watching, looking at the site, checking it out. Also, I just want to appeal to people, to run a campaign, unfortunately takes money. And I'm very uncomfortable with asking people for money, but unfortunately that's what it takes. And so I would appreciate if people would, if they like anything that I have to say, and they feel like they want to support me, that they would go to my website and see how they can contribute there. But I just hope people that will really sincerely evaluate what I'm saying compared to other people that are in this race. I don't feel like the incumbent has served us well, has not represented our values, and I think that we need to have more conservative people in the House. Frank Crane at a meeting, he talked about, the number of newly elected people that got, brought in, conservatives that came in 2022. And he says, I want 10 more, So we need to continue to add to the base that we've already.
Those are
added.
rookie numbers, Brent. Those are rookie numbers. I want 30 more. Because I mean, we have like what, 5? Okay, it's like 10 Democrats in the Idaho House out of 70. I want like 60 Republicans who are actual conservatives. That would be nice. That'd be great.
Okay, I don't want to misrepresent him, but it was something like that. Yeah, but you get the point.
One last question that just popped up in my mind. Where are you at on term limits?
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
For governor, for state lawmakers, for everybody.
Yes.
Okay, that was easy. How many terms would you give a governor, and how many terms would you give state lawmakers?
Governor, I'd say 2. State lawmakers, I'd say 3, maybe 4 tops.
Okay, cool. All right, Steve Tanner, running for seat 13B in the Idaho House of Representatives. Thank you so much for being on tonight. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you very much for having me on.
It was fun.
Appreciate it.
Okay, Steve Tanner, that was a really good conversation. It was a little wonky at times, but that's what's important. That's getting to know your people who want to represent you. That's what we got to do. Steve gave really, really good answers on a lot of things. I might quibble with him on some things. I'm somebody, for example, like no red flag gun laws ever, and I think he's with me on that. I don't know if we got that right, but I think he's there with me. Property taxes, like I'm eliminating them tomorrow. Maybe he would take a little bit longer, but I think that was a really solid interview. That was really, really solid. I liked the answers that he gave us on not backing down from leadership. I really liked the answer on not trading votes, because like I'm not somebody who wants to trade votes myself. So that he was so clear on that was impressive to me. That was a really good interview, and I appreciate Steve for coming on. I like that guy, and he has a nice beard too. Like I can't grow a beard, and his beard is amazing. So there's that. Okay, we have just a couple minutes left. Freedom Bros is about 2024. It's politics in Idaho, but we're focusing a lot on 2024. We want to make sure that you, the voter, are informed with all the things you need to know to make an informed choice at the polls next May. And we want to make sure that you really know and understand the issues before you. If you are voting for somebody just because they have an R next to their name, you're doing it wrong. If you're voting against somebody who has a D against their name, yeah, you're probably doing that right, because like the Democrats are crazy these days, but you still probably should do your homework. I voted for a Democrat once. It was 8 years ago, and it was a youthful indiscretion, but it was Grant Burgoyne. He's very nice. There was nobody else that was better. Anyway, don't hold that against me. We want to help you do your homework. So that's why we had Steve on tonight with that great interview. Very good interview. Next week, Amy Henry, who is running for the same seat 13B in the Idaho House, is going to be with us. She's made a name for herself as an education advocate. So we're going to be able to dig into education with her. I mean, that's the hot topic of the day besides property taxes, which Steve nailed on. Like he hit that one right on the head. So we're going to talk to Amy, and then hopefully Kenny Roten will come on. We'll make that invitation. I don't know if he will. We'll see. But we want to make sure that you guys are informed and equipped to make choices. So again, thank you so much, Steve, for coming on. Amy, we look forward to talking to you next week. Kenny, come on, let's have a discussion. And if you, the guests, the viewers, if there's somebody that you want to talk about, if you want to get away from elections for a little bit, if there's an issue that you want us to drill down into, please let us know. Drop a comment in the comments section, and we'll get to it, because we want to make sure that we are serving you, making sure that we're providing value to you. You're giving us your time. We want to make sure that we give you the best knowledge and the best experience that we have as we run this show. So I forgot to do this at the beginning, so I'm going to play a really handy dandy stinger to take us out, and hopefully Greg will have better internet next week so we can have 2 Freedom Bros. But thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we will see you next week on Freedom Bros.